Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. You are currently watching the Tom Colohue YouTube channel. We are live today, as is becoming something of a thing, at 6 p.m. here in the UK, 1 p.m. over in the US, for Eastern Standard Time at least. And we are going to be covering wrestling today, as per always. Hey Rob, how you doing, mate? Glad to see you. Been a little while. Today we're going to be covering a bit of draft news. We're going to be previewing the show tonight, who we expect to see change. We've gone into a lot of detail previously about some of the names that we're expecting and some of the names that would be featured in a mock draft, but not necessarily featured in a full draft per se, in the wonderful world of WWE. Lots of craziness and crazy things going on there, but we are getting hints and suggestions at the moment of who may be making the move, based essentially on the tweets that are coming out. Now, a lot of those tweets, to share a little bit of news that will be shared officially later on in spoiler warning, a lot of those tweets are being scripted by the company rather than the talent themselves. And as such, there are a number of hints that are in many ways unintentionally being released with these particular tweets and everything going on there. So lots going on, lots to cover, and we want to crack it on. Yes, Rob, absolutely. All my streams, whether Twitch or YouTube, they are Ask Me Anything streams. If you have any questions, please do share. If anything, the questions are a huge part of the show. I wouldn't be able to be a live streamer without the questions that people provide. I usually provide enough news on spoiler warning, for example, for about a half-hour show if I'm presenting to you. But I want to present with you. I want to be able to read your questions and say, this is what I think here. This is what's likely to happen here, and share as much information as possible. This is one of the reasons we're generally considered to be some of the best informed wrestling streams that you can find. Welcome, Michael. How are you doing, man? I'm doing pretty good. We are back live on YouTube, giving this a try again. As you know, we've been giving it a different sort of try recently. Instead of dual streams, doing some YouTube-only streams, which is slightly different to what we do on Twitch, which is sharing a lot of information. Tonight's spoiler warning, of course, will be much like that as well. So I hope you're doing as well, Michael. Glad to see you, mate. I would imagine so, Rob. You jump in with any questions you would like at any point. So tonight is Smackdown. And this is a very special Smackdown. The WWE are really hoping to get a very big number tonight. And the reason they're hoping for that is because they've just had the season premiere, as it were, for Fox. They will have a season premiere for USA a bit closer to WrestleMania. That's generally how it ticks across there. And with these season premieres, you also get a lot of questions from the companies, from the networks. You get Fox and USA asking a hell of a lot of questions of what the WWE can offer them long term. What's the plan? Where are they headed? Will they be sticking around? This is a lot of questions that need to be answered by a very small period of time. So the WWE needs to impress tonight and on Friday. They need to get impressive numbers, and they need to do that in a way that delivers consistently. It can't be a flash in the pan. So they need to basically say, these people will get us great numbers like this every week. You may have seen on Twitter a lot of WWE wrestlers tweeting out about the draft with the hashtag WWE Draft. Depending on where you are in the world and how much wrestling you consume, you may have seen that WWE Draft has been trending. Now, some people don't think it's trending. It's been great fun realizing that there are several people who follow me purely on Twitter looking for an opportunity to jump in and say, haha, you're wrong, when in fact I literally have picture evidence of something. But it's, as wonderful as that is to realize as we go forwards, it's worth saying that when it comes to how much is going on with the WWE Draft, it's a very hard thing to predict. However, there are definitely some hints in what has been tweeted out recently. The biggest hint that I've seen is a tweet from Bobby Lashley. Now, Bobby Lashley kind of tells on himself by basically saying, well, I'll see how it goes on SmackDown. I'll fancy my chances over there. Tells on himself ever so slightly in a way that I can't imagine the company were happy with if he wrote it. Little hint from spoiler warning later on, he didn't write it. Michael says, very excited for the draft. Me too. The draft shows are always a lot of fun. The fact that they can have, for example, Drew McIntyre versus Big E on Raw this coming week and still have Drew McIntyre on SmackDown full time the following Friday. It opens a lot of doors. It generates a lot of excitement. That's what grabs me. Rob says, one question is, if push comes to shove and Sasha Banks gets drafted, would you like to see a feud with Sasha and Charlotte? And do you think WWE will jump right into the feud? Honestly, if Sasha goes to Raw, I probably would put her straight into a feud with Charlotte, at least for the moment leading into the Royal Rumble, because that wouldn't be the That wouldn't then be the championship feud heading into WrestleMania. That's the big one that we need to be aware of. What's going to happen come WrestleMania? If Sasha Banks is immediately jumping into a feud with Charlotte Flair, it seems to suggest that someone else will be taking the opportunity against Charlotte I nearly said in the main event, which it could be, at WrestleMania. Now, I would like to see someone different at WrestleMania. I'd like Shayna Baszler, as I've alluded to on several occasions during these streams. Sasha Banks, for me, has a lot of other people she can face off with. I would like to see Sasha versus Nikki Cross. I think that's a good next step for Nikki. There's other people such as Rhea Ripley, for example, but I think that would be ideal for a call-up such as Io Shirai or Dakota Kai, or in fact a Toni Storm if she moves to Raw to take on Sasha Banks, as Sasha Banks helps people to develop in much the same way she helped Bianca Belair to develop. Bayley also helped Bianca Belair to develop, of course. Before I continue, one thing that you can do which would be a huge help to me and my channels, welcome noob, how you doing mate, is just click the like button. You don't necessarily have to click subscribe, though if you haven't, I do implore you to do so. But what I found is that I usually have a viewership 1 or 2 higher than the amount of likes that I have on the video. It has a direct and strong impact. So if you haven't yet, please do remember to click that like button. It does make a huge difference in the ranking of the video, how easy it is to find on YouTube, and it is one of the principal reasons that so many of my videos have had tremendous views recently. I've had more than 400 views on the video about Bayley's return schedule and quite a lot of views about the USA versus Fox battle for Roman Reigns. That's something I'm going to be talking about a little later on once I've caught up with the chat. Michael says I could really do without seeing Sasha and Charlotte having another feud myself, but that's just me. As a big Sasha Banks fan, I do respect your opinion there, Michael. You've seen a lot of it and so have I. But to be fair, that feud ended in around 2017, so coming up 5 years ago. I think they could do a lot more with these two women, but I would like it to be a brief return, rather than a long-term, several-month feud. A brief return as a way of saying, look, we have these two, we're not going to screw about, we're going to give you high-quality matches. At the very least, we can guarantee that that's what you'll get from these two. I probably wouldn't have Sasha Banks going over. I'd have Charlotte retaining, heading into taking on Shayna Baszler, who for me would win a Rumble, or Bayley, who would win a Rumble and go to the SmackDown side. It's a difficult read, but I would very much like to see Sasha Banks stay on SmackDown myself. My prediction for the draft is that Sasha Banks will be remaining on SmackDown. I need to talk for a moment about Roman Reigns and the plans there. I've been putting out innumerable videos talking about the possibility of Roman Reigns moving to Raw. The USA Network want this. Fox desperately want him to stay on SmackDown. And you may know that I also did a video quite recently stating that the WWE very likely to be consistent in choosing Fox over the USA Network. That would mean Roman Reigns remaining on Raw, which I know a lot of people believe is going to be the case regardless of anything else. That seems a logical choice. I said Raw there, remaining on SmackDown. It seems a logical choice, and it seems to be largely inescapable at times. However, there is a lot of movement expected. Bobby Lashley did sort of tell on himself, as I've said, when it comes to the tweets recently, suggesting that he may be moving to SmackDown. Drew McIntyre is the bookies' favourite to move brands, so if you see Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre moving across to SmackDown, that leaves a pretty big gap at the top of Raw. I'm not sure who could fill it. Now, it could be that we see Becky, Sasha, maybe Edge moving across to Raw, taking up that top spot, but that doesn't take up that top spot. that doesn't fill the gap. It still leaves a massive gaping hole at the top of Raw, with only one person who could really fill it. So he may have, backup, as it were. Yeah, Brandon May says, Mr. Colohue. Oh, I like that. I like that. You are literal maestro nickname right there. Love it. Noob says, yesterday I posted a very long thread on who's going to be drafted to Raw, NXT, and Smackdown. I'll be excited to have a read of that, Noob, next time I jump onto Twitter. And Brandon says, you're not bald yet. No, sorry, mate. Still so much hair. Although I do need a haircut. And it's going really grey right now. I'm only 33, but I'm getting really, really old. You say that, Michael. It's a weird question to ask here on YouTube where people don't get the context, maybe. But that's a Twitch thing. That is one of the many Twitch in-jokes we have. And I've just realised I haven't actually pointed out where we'll be later on. Tune in for spoiler warning at twitch.tv. Right at the top. Is it, mate? In a pinned message for anyone who wants to check that out. So when it comes to the draft, we are in a very enjoyable moment right now. Because this, I feel, is a draft that's one of the hardest to predict that there's ever been. Really, genuinely, incredibly difficult to say, this person's going here, this person's going here. There are a number of changes which are definitely coming, but there is clear star power on one show over another. This is the difficulty that the WWE have, and this is what I'm personally going to find the most fascinating aspect. How are the WWE going to keep Fox happy when literally all of the stars are on SmackDown? If you're ranking all of the top stars in WWE, you've got Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Edge, just as an obvious 5 right now on SmackDown. Over on Raw, you've got Randy Orton, certainly. You've got Alexa Bliss. You have AJ Styles. You've got Charlotte Flair. I don't think they come particularly close to that SmackDown group. I really don't. How do you, as a WWE member of staff, explain to a Fox executive, yeah, we moved 2 of the top stars off, but it's okay, you've got Drew McIntyre? I don't think that quite balances out. Rob says, do you see Bianca Belair possibly moving to Raw? Personally, yes, I do. And I think that would be a real coup for Raw to get hold of Bianca Belair. I think this triple threat that's been teased, we may see it actually this week on SmackDown, because that may be the only opportunity to see it. Because I feel there'll be a move for at least one of these 3 to Raw. Sasha and Becky I have staying on SmackDown, though it would make sense for Becky and Seth to both move to Raw as those star power names. Becky particularly is fairly fresh there. But at the same time, Bianca Belair has sort of run through SmackDown already. Becky Lynch escaped from her, so there's unfinished business there, but she's beaten Sasha Banks clean. She was gonna beat her again, eventually, as I'm sure. She's beaten Bayley. She's beaten Zelina Vega and Carmella. She's beaten everyone. There's no one left, really. She's even beaten Liv Morgan. So what is there left to do? I would move her to Raw. I would have her come in and wrestle against Rhea Ripley. Wrestle against Shayna Baszler, who'd be my new Queen of the Ring. Before eventually wrestling against Charlotte Flair. Now, I don't necessarily have this as a WrestleMania match. I personally would want Shayna Baszler to be that one. But it could be, and it would deserve to be. Bianca Belair for me is a logical move. The Raw does add some star power. It's someone that they've certainly developed, as it were. But I'd just like to see something different for Bianca Belair. Rob agrees, said, I find it hard to believe they'll keep Becky, Sasha and Bianca all together. Those 3 are so hard to predict. They are. They are. Literally any of them could move to Raw. Raw kind of desperately needs all of them. Difficult one to read. Justin Stevens, welcome mate. Thank you by the way for so many comments recently on the YouTube videos. I really do appreciate that. Comments really do help here on YouTube. It shows engagement. So it's a like and a comment are about as valuable as each other. So they really help my videos find an audience. So appreciate the amount of comments you Says, will Alexa, Sheamus, and Bayley even be drafted? Difficult to tell. Bayley, I don't think will be drafted. Sheamus and Alexa, I do believe they will be. Because even though they're injured at the moment, also Randy Orton, even though they're carrying injuries at the moment, they're expected back relatively soon. Alexa Bliss will only be gone a brief time. Sheamus is expected to return to the ring in a couple of weeks. By a couple of weeks, I mean 5, 6, somewhere near 8, around that region. So I believe they will need to be drafted. Bayley, however, I would intentionally leave undrafted. Because I feel Bayley is one of those names where when she returns, she's going to get a pretty big reaction from that WWE universe, from the fans. She's going to get a lot of people really behind her. I feel with how well her heel run has gone, she's going to get a very strong face pop. I don't want to let that go. Now, if you saw my video about Bayley's return schedule, I did fantasy book a little bit. Fantasy book. That Bayley may be returning closer to Royal Rumble time than the expected schedule of after WrestleMania. I would keep an eye on that one based on the evidence that has been shown by Bayley herself and the WWE's Instagram channel. Brandon says, do you think Becky and Seth are staying on SmackDown? I personally prefer them on Raw. It's a difficult one and it depends on Roman. Everything kind of depends on Roman. If SmackDown loses Roman, they can't afford to lose anyone else. That's how far ahead he is of everyone right now. So I would keep Seth and Becky on SmackDown, but I'm also that guy who would move Roman to Raw. I don't see how they get out of it the possibility that someone says, okay, you've got the first draft pick, then I have to choose Roman. If Raw get first choice and don't choose Roman, they lose all credibility in the field, and there's really no point trusting the WWE to do that one. How they're going to decide who gets the first pick, that's going to be very, very telling tonight. Very telling. Michael says, Raw could use another big name for the women. I think Sasha and Becky stay on SmackDown and Charlotte stays on, imagine you say Raw there. I did theorize that Alexa Bliss could be moving to SmackDown. I still believe that. There is a rebranding coming for Alexa Bliss, which I'll discuss a lot more at Spoiler Warning, and because that's a news show. But the rebrand should hopefully reinvigorate her a little, and I feel it will be going closer to who Alexa Bliss was on SmackDown when she was on SmackDown, when she debuted there, and when she first became a women's champion. There are championships in Alexa Bliss's future, and I think if you have a top level on SmackDown of Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Alexa Bliss, you've got enough there, even before you look at, for example, bringing Liv Morgan closer to that top level, Sonya Deville's impending return, even before you factor that in, I think there's enough for many, many months of really high quality feud. Really high quality. So I would say Alexa Bliss. So you've suggested someone there. Michael says a match with Shayna would be a good callback from NXT for Bianca. I agree. Shayna Baszler to SmackDown could also be great. Shayna Baszler coming to SmackDown, being who she was when she destroyed Nia Jax, when she destroyed Eva Marie, being that person, going over to SmackDown, and then basically being the same on the lower card, working with a Liv Morgan, working with Carmella and Zelina Vega, not even thinking about face or heel, just destroying people. That Shayna Baszler for me is a Rumble winner to get a rematch against Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. This time for me, coming away with the gold. If anyone hasn't clicked like on the video yet, please do consider doing so. That is a huge help in the growth, one, of this video individually, getting new viewers, but also finding people who can subscribe. If you're enjoying content like this, if you have questions you want to ask and you haven't clicked subscribe yet, what are you waiting for? Go right ahead. And also, if you haven't tuned in to a spoiler warning or one of the watch-alongs that we do on Twitch, please do consider jumping over to twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, where we do a lot more live streams. You guys are available to ask a lot more questions, and there is just a lot more content going on. Plus, of course, spoiler warning involves a lot of news you cannot find anywhere else, analysis, looking at the actual evidence, and seeing what we can learn. Right? Hi AK, how are you doing, mate? Says, hey Tom, how are you? I'm doing very well, thank you AK. I hope you're doing well as well. AK says, any NXT call-ups rumors apart from LA Knight? LA Knight is the most heavily rumored, but there is still every possibility of several names. Dakota Kai for me seems a lock at this point. They are testing the water with Austin Theory. They want him as a call-up, but they're not convinced he's ready for that level. There are also a number of other people. I'm looking at, for example, Io Shirai, who I know she's in a tag team feud right now, but I think the WWE proper need her more. Also, I'd have a look at Johnny Gargano, who at this point the WWE are going to start pitching contract ideas to. And once they start pitching contract ideas, a lot of those concepts will be based around the idea of, hey, have you thought about moving to the main roster? Just to check, just a quick check. Have you thought about moving to the main roster? A lot of those concepts that are being discussed will be about that in particular. And honestly, it's about time for Johnny Gargano, who I feel needs to either move up or move on. That said, every time I say that, he proves me wrong, and the way has been a lot of fun. So maybe he doesn't really want to move up, as it were. Maybe he's found a comfortable position and he'd like to stay there. I'm not going to tell him off for that. I'm not going to be upset by that. I think that would be a good move for everyone. If he's comfortable where he is, okay. Justin Stevens says, please tell me Styles and Omos split. I don't see them splitting. I see them moving as a tag team, but I don't think they'll be a tag team all that much longer. I personally see Styles and Omos moving to SmackDown, probably in exchange for, well, I suggested the Usos previously, but I'd just like to see a bit of a shake-up in the different teams. Maybe they could move for a Chad Gable and Otis, for example, and make a bit of a difference there. But I do think that we are going to see that particular move with the basis that AJ Styles can then wrestle against the Finn Balor's, the Kevin Owens's, Sami Zayn's. I know there's a lot of feuds that he's already had there, but it's it's AJ Styles. And I want to see more Styles Roman. I want to see more Styles Seth. You've got that top level there begging for the opportunity. You've just got to give them AJ Styles and watch them fly. Justin says, is everyone available or are there two split pools like last year? The WWE are keeping the cards close to their chest. The intention is to draft so many on Raw and so many on SmackDown in a very similar way. So it's not really like, okay, this is a first draft pick or this is this draft pick. Everyone will be available, but not necessarily on the same night. They are not announcing anything ahead of time because they want you to tune in for the mystery, essentially. They want you to tune in not knowing, and so on and so forth. Noob says, destroying Eva is very satisfying. Indeed it was. I don't know if Eva Marie is going to be drafted, but I know that Doudrop will. Rob says, I fear for Finn Balor, Tom. You and me both, mate. This is one thing we've always connected over. A move to Raw could benefit, but I don't know. In SmackDown's preview video, they had Finn and said, what's next for the Demon? What is next for the Demon? I've covered a little bit in a video on here, but let's talk about it live while we've got people in here who can bounce off me a little bit. I know you're a huge fan, Rob. I know you're a huge fan. I was really, for a moment at least, believing that Finn Balor would become the Universal Champion. I had Finn Balor as a #1 male SmackDown pick, second only to Becky Lynch in the female category. That was where I was going with it. Finn Balor as champion, wrestling against AJ Styles, Owens, Zayn, Rollins, people of that ilk, and of course Drew McIntyre. But I think if Finn Balor remains on SmackDown, which I think is most likely personally at the moment, I don't think they will have moved him this close to the draft and not keep him on SmackDown. I fear he's going straight down to wrestling Shinsuke Nakamura. Now I'm going to enjoy those matches. I'm going to very much enjoy those matches. But I can't help but feel like there's just a little bit more that we could get out of it. Michael says, does Shayna doing what she did to Eva really give Shayna any heel heat considering it's Eva? No. On me. To be fair, it didn't on Nia Jax either. This is the situation, and it's, like I say, difficult one to read. I don't think they're going to push Shayna as a face, certainly. I don't think they're going to push her as a heel right now. I think they're going to push her as an equal opportunity destroyer of women. Possibly even a couple of men. That's what I'd like to see. And that's what I certainly think she is more than capable of. Shayna Baszler, for me, take her all the way to the top. Start now and don't mess around. She's ready. She's been ready for a long time. It's just that the WWE haven't been. I'm very interested to see the future for Shayna Baszler. I do know that there is a push coming to Shayna. A significant one at that. I want to see how it plays out, because I don't know how far and how long it's going to go. And she's there. She's one of the most talented women there, with a very unique and different style. You've just got to make it happen now. Noob says, I believe it's time for Io Shirai to go to the main roster. Her as a tag team champion with Zoe Stark is random. There is nothing to suggest that these two can't come up together. We need women's tag teams on the main roster. Even though they are currently champions, they could have both belts. Because I think it's very possible that these belts are unified. There aren't enough women's tag teams, particularly after the releases that we had of so many women who were in tag teams. At this point, I think there may be a possibility of these championships being reconciled. Though I also do have a theory about the WWE and Universal Championships being reconciled, and then one of them being reintroduced on Smackdown. Because I think the New Day with WWE Champion Big E and Universal Champion Roman Reigns would be very interesting to have. That would mean that a Survivor Series, we then get a title unification match. That's just me fantasy booking, but I'd still kind of love to see it. Irvin Abro, welcome mate, says move Toni Storm to Raw. They've done absolutely nothing with her on SmackDown. I agree with you. She needs a change. The WWE need to be willing to say, we got it wrong on this one. They need to be bold enough to say, we were wrong. Get on with it. Get it done. If anyone is sat chatting and hasn't clicked like yet, please do consider doing so. As I've said, I usually see viewership just over the amount of likes I have. So if you can click that like button, I'd very much appreciate it. It helps me find a new audience and helps me potentially find new subscribers. So please do consider that while viewing. Brendan says, do you see any returns for the draft? Not at this time. Mostly people who are missing right now are either injured or have been fired. So when it comes to returns, I'm not sure who would return, who would be compelling enough viewing, other than, for example, people who've been brought back from NXT. Justin says, assuming Carmella moves to Raw since Graves is there, I think that's possible, but not definitive. Carmella and Graves have kind of proven that you don't need to be drafted to the same side. That said, they were drafted and changed during the COVID era when they weren't doing live shows all the time. So it's a very different schedule. You're able to spend a lot more time with your partners. Kevin says, what happens to The Miz? The Miz, I don't see being drafted right now. Particularly with Dancing with the Stars, they don't have any plans for him because they don't know when they'll get him back. They want him to go as far as possible. They'll give him the best leeway they can. But I think The Miz would stay on Raw because of the connection to Miz and Mrs. on the USA Network. The Miz at this point has been a guy who's gone Raw, SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown. I see him staying on Raw because of Miz and Mrs., because of his connection to the network. He's become the definitive USA Network guy, and I see him staying there. Gomez says, everybody said the draft can fix Monday Night Raw. Wrong, better booking can fix the Raw product. That's a fair point, and I agree with you there. I do think Raw over the last 3 or 4 weeks has been much better, and not just because of the inclusion of Roman Reigns last week. Big E versus Bobby Lashley this week was very, very good, and they used it very well. It was also, I think the beginning of this was a Tag Team Turmoil match, where they started with Tag Team Turmoil, ended with the rest of Tag Team Turmoil, and just produced a very enjoyable show. That was one of the things for me that really got Raw going again. Justin says, who do you feel like has to get away from another wrestler? For example, I think McIntyre, Lashley, as do Edge and Rollins, and probably Sasha and Belair. I agree with all of what you've said there. All of those names. McIntyre, Lashley, definitely. Even if they both go to SmackDown, the feud needs to end now. Edge and Rollins, definitely. That's been going on way too much. That said, Rollins and Rey Mysterio are on the same brand and successfully got away from each other. So I do think it's very possible to escape that even while on the same brand. And I think the Mysterios, by the way, are moving to Raw. Alyssa Stansbury, welcome. Says Finn Balor deserves better. They brought him back and brought the Demon out just to have him lose. I'm with you. Kevin says, do you think Keith Bearcat Lee is going to get over with the fans? Yeah, I think enough people have done a bit of research now and learned about the Bearcat character, but I don't think he needed it. Like, I think Keith Lee was a good enough character on his own, and people were really behind him. This for me has been detrimental. You can't make changes for change's sake, and I feel this is kind of what we've got. Alyssa says, think there's too many heels in WWE, need to balance out the heel babyface. I do agree there. The top of both women's divisions in particular are very heel heavy, and there are very few faces being pushed. Bianca Belair was kind of it. Rhea Ripley's being pushed as a face now, but Nikki Cross was also being pushed as a face, and the crowd just didn't react. They didn't respond. It didn't connect. Cross is almost a superhero character. Also a detriment was the almost a superhero character, but that's just my... Noob says, better yet an anti-hero for Shayna Baszler or a similar style of Randy Orton. That's what I'm saying, Noob. Randy Orton isn't being pushed as face or heel. He's just being pushed as Randy Orton. Certain people reach that level and then sort of go beyond it. I think Shayna could definitely be one of those. Michael says, you think Sasha is a full-blown heel? She was a heel attacking Bianca. Looked more like a face when she attacked Becky at Extreme Rules. Sasha Banks is definitely a heel. The question at this point is whether Becky will stay a heel now that Sasha Banks has returned. Once Becky gets away from Bianca and starts feuding with Sasha, I feel she'll go back to the face persona. That's just my opinion. Noob says, speaking of Toni Storm, she's finally engaged with Juice Robinson. Don't agree with the finally, don't get what you're saying there. You know, engagement is something that they choose. But congratulations to Toni Storm and Juice Robinson. He certainly looks very good in his hats. Justin says, unpopular opinion, but I believe US and IC titles should be on Raw to make less filler on Raw, and tag titles should be exclusive to SmackDown. It's not enough men's teams. I do disagree there personally, Justin. I think we do actually have enough men's teams when you consider the ones further down the card. You still have Lucha House Party, who aren't really being used at the moment because one of them is out. You have Mustafa Ali and Mansoor. You have now Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo. You have all of those lower down the card. Then you have Viking Raiders, Otis and Chad Gable, the Usos, the New Day, the Street Profits. You have some very strong tag teams. That's before you consider Retribution, for example. You do have the teams. I haven't even mentioned RK Bro, AJ Styles and Amos. There are plenty of teams. They just need to be featured properly. I feel SmackDown's doing a very good job doing this when it comes to when it comes to the Usos, the Street Profits now. You've seen the Mysterios versus the Usos already. The Usos have been extremely well used, and so have a lot of the tag teams going against them. AK says Balor needed the Prince gimmick he has in NXT. Bring it onto the main roster and just have stellar matches. It was one of the most disappointing things I've had to report when I got the news immediately after he came up, literally the week Finn Balor returned to SmackDown, that the Demon King would be returning, and he would be returning to something closer to his main roster character again. Every now and then I have to say things that I really don't like, and that I know people don't like, but they're true. I still have to say. Star Wars Lounge says, are they not going to do Miz and Morrison feud when Miz is back? Has it cooled off too much? I'm sure they'll want to. I'm sure that'll be something they want to do. But has it cooled off too much? To the point where it's a lot like Elias and Jackson Riker. You know? They may return to that, but I don't really feel I want them to. I'm still waiting to see what the next step is for Elias. But is it going to be compelling enough to be worth waiting for? That's a difficulty at this point. Brandon also says, do you think Hardy is staying on Raw or being moved? Not sure, honestly, with the way he lost at the lost in the United States Championship match at Extreme Rules. I would probably be keeping him on Raw, but I do think he needs the change as much as anyone. Go to SmackDown, Finn Balor versus Jeff Hardy, but it depends what they're going to do with him. Jeff Hardy's been on Raw a long time, and they've done nothing with the guy. If anything, he's just been there to make you realize other people exist. It's a very, very confusing one. I sometimes forget that Jeff Hardy's even there, to be completely honest. He may stay on Raw purely so that they can use him on main event, and isn't that one of the most depressing things you've ever heard anyone say? Christoph, how you doing, mate? Says, hi Tom, nice to see you go live on YouTube. Hope you're good. I'm excited for the draft, especially who will go up from NXT. Do you have predictions for that? I'll just reiterate briefly what I said a little bit earlier. Christoph, my belief is that from NXT, we are likely to see LA Knight. He's just too charismatic to not. I'd be looking at Austin Theory that they've been checking out recently. Dakota Kai, Io Shirai, they seem like obvious choices as well. Essentially, people who aren't doing much on NXT right now, I would expect them to start appearing on the main roster relatively soon. But a lot of those decisions have not been finalized just. For anyone just joining us, hi, I'm Tom Colohue. I stream here on YouTube and I also stream on Twitch. I'm a pro wrestling journalist with PW Torch, where I host the Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, WWE focused podcast, allowing other people to focus on non-WWE stuff as well. If you are enjoying this content, please do consider subscribing to the channel and of course clicking that like button, which does help us find new viewers, new audiences, and get the word out there that we are making something very, very good here and very, very fun that we can really make a bit for everyone. We are an Ask Me Anything stream. If you have any questions, jump in, ask away, go nuts, and we'll have a good chat. Noob says, another example is Asuka and Charlotte Flair. I think it's time for Charlotte Flair and Asuka needs to be separated. Asuka for me is definitely someone I would say should go to Smackdown. Asuka versus Becky Lynch has got a bit of history against Sasha Banks, could still work out long term, and it depends who else moves with her. That said, Bianca Belair versus Asuka, very exciting prospect, but Asuka would lose if that would. AK says, what title do you want to get rid of in WWE? Women's tag teams, main roster, or NXT, or 24/7 title? I wouldn't get rid of any of them, to be completely honest. If I was going to get rid of one, it would likely be the Cruiserweight Championship. Because one thing I've noticed is that the Cruiserweight Championship doesn't have any Cruiserweights anymore. They fired them all. The WWE fired all the Cruiserweights. So the Cruiserweight Championship, kind of pointless. Let's move the Cruiserweights into IC Championship contention, and so on and so forth. The rosters are much smaller now. They can afford to do something like that. Irvin says, Karrion Kross needs Scarlett Bordeaux on Raw. I agree. If you've been watching this channel for a while, when Karrion Kross first came up, I did report the news. Yeah, Fightful, that the plan was to have Karrion Kross go on a bit of a losing streak until Scarlett Bordeaux came to basically rescue him and bring him back to who he was previously. That's still here on this channel if you want to check it out, with more news about what the plan was at that time. I think he will be one that's called up with the draft and reinvigorates him, because right now he's just a dodgy Aleister Black clone. And that's not his fault. That's the booking he's been given. Rob says, honestly, maybe I'm in the minority, but Mansoor has been so entertaining and he has so much charisma, he can do a lot. I completely agree. I think it's amazing the amount of charisma he has when you consider he lost his Raw debut and that was the end of his undefeated streak, and he's so charismatic, nobody even batted an eyelid. This team with Ali is extremely compelling. I would like to see them move to SmackDown and at least in and around Championship Gold. Brendan says, Becky wasn't exactly working as a heel anyway. Personally, after the whole the man gimmick came around, she's one of them who doesn't need to be a face or heel, she's just the man. Completely agree. Completely agree. Thank you for that, Ed. Completely agree with what you've said there. Becky Lynch is someone who is top level. Absolutely top level. Why mess around with it when you've got something that's definitively working? Now, I get why they leaned her into heel. The reasoning was Bianca Belair could have been booed against Becky Lynch if Becky Lynch acted like the man. They did this so that Bianca Belair got the rub. It's worked. If Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch now separate, you don't need it anymore. Michael agrees that Mansoor actually does have a lot of charisma. Justin disagrees, saying Mansoor is awful. I definitely don't agree saying he's awful. I quite like the guy and think he can go a long way. But, agree on that one. Irvin says, can you see LA Knight and Frankie Monet moving to the main roster? Yes, I can, though I do think NXT needs Frankie a little bit longer. I would probably keep her for another 6 months or so. Also says, reports said Finn Balor wants to go to NXT UK. He has mentioned in the past going to NXT UK. He's someone who is never satisfied with his lot. That's a good thing. He's always looking to improve himself and put people over. He has featured in NXT UK, wrestling a match against Jordan Devlin. I was able to interview Jordan Devlin and ask him about this match. And his comments did surprise me. That's on this channel as well, way back. Irvin says, what happens to Mia Yim? At the moment, they're still waiting for a storyline to have her return. So once they have something for her, she will undoubtedly reappear. I do think long term, just pair her up with Keith Lee, around with it. But the reason she hasn't been booked is essentially after stepping out of the Royal Rumble, the WWE wanted, at least in their words, to give her the time that she needed and that he needed to come out of the other side. Keith Lee has come out of the other side, so the WWE are still monitoring him and not asking a lot. They're just not asking a lot, just in case. John Wrestling, welcome to the show, says, what's up, man? Do you see Nakamura and Priest switching, or does McMahon love McAfee dancing on the table too much? I don't personally see them switching, and yes, that is a part of it. More of a part of it than I initially thought it would be. But Pat McAfee has impressed a lot of people in the WWE. Genuinely. His commentary has been viewed very, very well, and the fact that he toned down slightly and only really goes full pelt when Nakamura's there with Boogs, that works for me and it works for a lot of people. While I don't see them switching, I think it's actually more to do with Damian Priest. Damian Priest for me has that giant feel about him. He'd do very well on SmackDown. I think he'll do great anywhere, but Raw is where Bad Bunny will go. Raw is where Bad Bunny will return, probably early next year. And when he does return, the WWE want him to do something else with Damian Priest. That's the plan that they're considering. Although Bad Bunny may work with someone else, there will undoubtedly be some small connections with Damian Priest as well. Viewership is doing extremely well right now. If for anyone just joining us, I'm Tom Colohue. We are currently doing a SmackDown preview for the first night of the WWE Draft 2021. If you like shows like this, I do a lot of live streams, so please click subscribe and consider jumping on over to twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, where we do watch-alongs, and we will be watching WWE SmackDown live tonight and reacting to the draft. You can also, if it's your first time here, ask me any questions you would like, and I will endeavour to answer every single one. Let me know if I've missed any, and please do click like on the video. It helps us to find a new and growing audience, helps me grow, and will eventually earn me an income by you guys just watching as you are right now. It will cost you nothing and would make a huge difference to me, so please do consider clicking that like. Brandon says, is 205 still even alive and kicking? How is? Yeah, it's still going. There's a lot of women's matches on there now. It's definitely not 205 live anymore. It's very, very different. But it is still a wrestling show that they are essentially doing Overflow on. It's the NXT Overflow. It's the NXT main event. No one's watching it, but what else is new? Christoph says, I miss Balor's Prince gimmick too. I liked Balor's second run in NXT a lot, except his clear losses against Cross. That somehow didn't fit for me as a good buy. Finn Balor for me is one of those that he's at a level where he can give back and he can give back strong. He doesn't always need to, certainly, but he can. Finn Balor can be a star maker. He can make new top level talent. I'd like him to work with someone like Damian Priest, but I do remember when he first came up and returned from his injury and he was working with Elias, and Elias had fairly recently debuted as well. Finn Balor for many in WWE is just an easy option, and I don't like it. It's not just because of my Irish blood. It's because I like Finn Balor. His abs are glorious. I am incredibly jealous. Well, hey, if people keep tipping for squats on Twitch, I'll undoubtedly end up with incredible abs. For anyone who does take part in the Twitch streams as well, yes, we will start doing bits for squats as well as subscriptions. Soon. I'm planning on talking about that at Spoiler Warning a little bit later, when we'll also have a number of other news. Let's actually just quickly jump in and say what we're planning to discuss on Spoiler Warning later. We're going to talk about the rebrand for Alexa Bliss, the Randy Orton injury, WWE making every effort to secure big numbers and big ratings for this week on Raw and SmackDown, and the reason they're doing that, the fact that USA and Fox are watching the ratings specifically this week and why they're doing that. Majority of wrestlers have not been told what brand they're going to belong to next week. We're going to be talking about... Meltzer's been talking about low Survivor Series ticket sales. I'm going to be asking some questions there as well. And we're going to be talking about the great week we've just had right here on YouTube. So if anyone does want to catch that, it will be available cut down into video clips and shows here on YouTube, or you can pop over to Spoiler Warning at 10 p.m. tonight, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for news live, where you can also ask. Thank you very much. Ed says, boo Becky as well. AK says, what's your go-to match to watch from WWE recently? I regularly go back and watch Cena Styles at SummerSlam and Keith versus Dijakovic from Portland. There's a number of matches that I've been sort of going back to recently. They mostly, to be honest, involve Becky Lynch. There's the Evolution Last Woman Standing match. I loved that match. But in addition to that, there is also the SummerSlam Triple Threat, where she turned heel when it was Carmella as champion against Charlotte and Becky. My chair's slowly falling apart. I need to screw that back in. Oh, Brandon responds with Lesnar versus Styles at Survivor Series. Good match. Rob says, is Damian Priest highly regarded in McMahon's eyes? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's hugely well regarded by not just Vince McMahon, but by basically everyone backstage. He has the same sort of vibe around him that Bianca Belair did, and look what they did with her. You know, that's what they're thinking. Brandon agrees, believes that Priest is a future world champ. Rob says, also, this is the last question on Sasha. Is Vince still a fan, and does WWE bigwigs view her as a top star of the company? Be entirely clear. Sasha Banks may be Vince McMahon's favourite person in the world. She's certainly on a par in his eyes with his favourite child, Stephanie. Certainly on a par there. So yes, Vince will continue to view Sasha as one of, if not the top stars of the company. Where she goes here, they're expecting fans to follow. Sasha Banks is a proven draw, and they will take as much advantage of that as they possibly can. Also, you don't need to worry about it being your last question, mate. Just go nuts. Ask whatever questions you like. It's an Ask Me Anything stream. John says, assuming WWE still uses a 3-2 format with Raw getting 3-2 for SmackDown, how can Raw not pick Reigns first? Talk about insulting our intelligence. Completely agree. I absolutely, completely agree with that. Whoever picks first, they have to pick Roman Reigns. Anything else is just treating us like idiots. They're obviously going to be picking Roman Reigns, whoever is first. If you don't, let's say you pick Drew McIntyre, we know what you've done. We know what's happened there. You've just skipped a go. There has never been such an obvious first draft pick as Roman Reigns, and indeed his bloodline. Irvin says, can NXT be on Survivor Series this year? No, NXT 2.0 is a developmental brand. There are no plans at the moment that I'm aware of for them to be in Survivor Series. Irvin also says, Dave Meltzer said 1,500 fans left the arena during Charlotte and Alexa Bliss segment on Raw. He did say that. I've got a video on that. Oh, no, I don't. No, the video I've got is about what he said about Adam Cole. Either way, anyone watching the show can tell that that did not happen. So, Meltzer in numbers, I have questions. Alyssa says, really miss Ronda Rousey. She brings something to the division. I agree. Firstly, congratulations to Ronda Rousey on the birth of her child. And I really do feel that Ronda Rousey's style, the really quite intense brawling style, is something that's missing from WWE. But it doesn't have to be. They have Shayna Baszler, who can do that. They have Sonya Deville when she's ready to return, who can do that. They can make something of that. Christoph says, what would you recommend for someone who's quite new to New Japan? I started a subscription but keep hearing it's not their strongest phase now. You enjoy the G1, should I start somewhere else? The G1 for me is the ideal opportunity to get into New Japan. Ideal. I would, however, go back a year. Because there's a number of people that I feel are missing. There's obvious ones, former champion Tetsuya Naito. There's a big one in Jay White. Losing Jay White from the G1, that's big. And it really has cost them. So I would go back a year. I wouldn't look up any results. It's all there on the New Japan subscription, NJPW World. Just go back a year to the previous year's G1 climax. Watch that. Just watch it all. Every single bit. It's absolutely amazing. Just great quality wrestling. And how they're able to book the G1 so compelling is incredible. Tell you who you're going to love, because you don't see anyone like them anywhere else. Zack Sabre Jr., the best wrestler in the world. There's no hyperbole. No wrestler can even come close, and you don't believe it until you see it. There is no better wrestler in the entire world than Zack Sabre Jr. You don't believe it till you see it. Then you see it and you're like, yep, 100%. Also, Toru Yano, the ultimate shithouse. Literally, the ultimate in shithousery. No, you've never seen anyone cheat to win in the same way. Then you have Minoru Suzuki, who will just murder people. Straight up murder people. You are not ready, mate, and I really hope you check it out because it's so much fun. Theas, welcome, mate, says, which was the best draft year for you? 2016, when they first resplit Raw and SmackDown. That was it for me. That was the top. And I don't think they've come close since. Genuinely don't think they've even come close. That for me was the top one. Because it looked like SmackDown lost. And it looked like SmackDown lost badly. Badly. Even though they had AJ Styles, who made SmackDown that year. They had John Cena. They had Randy Orton. They had Dean Ambrose, who was the champion at the time. There was a notable drop after that top level. They got none of the top women's stars, even though Becky then made herself a top women's star. They got none of the top tag teams other than the Usos. It was bare bones, but they made it work. Meanwhile, Raw had all of the big boys, all of the giants. And it was still so fun because you walked almost immediately into Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar, a great balls of fire. How good is that? Wonderful times. Rob says, I've become such a huge fan of Bianca and Priest. They've done wonders for both of them. The WWE gets a lot of crap for not being able to book babyfaces. The reason they get a lot of crap for this is because historically, they've not been able to book babyfaces. So it's nice when they do, you know? Every now and then you have to sit down and say, they've done a good job there. Because ultimately, they've done a good job there. With Damian Priest, with Bianca Belair, they've done a great job. John Wrestling says, do you believe it's best for Alexa to move away from Charlotte or return to feud with her? As a huge Bliss fan, I want more Goddess Bliss back and just away from Raw as a start over. I think Alexa Bliss will be moving to SmackDown, just my opinion on this one. Getting away from Charlotte, but I don't think she needs to necessarily get away from Charlotte. The feud with Charlotte has been very, very brief, as in fact has been their previous feud at Survivor Series 2017, I think it was. Those two have not actually worked together very often at all. And for two people who genuinely respect each other as much as they do, I would like to see a little bit more. At the moment though, I don't personally see it. I think Alexa Bliss will go to SmackDown for a bit of a change. Rob says, does WWE watch merch numbers as well? I asked because a month ago, WWE's Twitter page had this new thing where they linked Roman's, Cena's and Sasha's merch on their page specifically. They do watch merch numbers. They do track all of this. The social media team rarely get information saying, I want you to push this merch, but every now and then they do, so they do. So it's a bit of that. Christoph says, thanks Tom, I'll do that and start with the G1 2020. I'll tell you in a few weeks how I liked that, really looking forward to watching it. I hope you have a great time. There's a number of wrestlers I haven't mentioned there that really make a huge impact. You'll have to let me know how you get on, mate. Alyssa says, haven't cared about the women's division since Ronda Rousey started missing. She's a big star in the division. She prefers Ronda Rousey over the 4 horsewomen. The 4 horsewomen are certainly getting pushed more than anyone else in the women's division. We're seeing sort of a return to form of the horsewomen getting all of the attention right now after a while of other people getting it. But it depends what they do with them. Bayley, Sasha, Becky have done a great job with Bianca. They have. And I think they need to be applauded for that as much as anyone else. John says, I feel like 2004 way to do it was underrated when it comes to draft, but I love the 2016 draft. I honestly didn't catch that one. I wasn't watching in 2004. I haven't caught up on every single show. So I wasn't watching at that time. So I can't really say, but I do very much enjoy the way they did it in 2016. If not just for Shane McMahon's facial expressions when he lost out on a pick that he really wanted, but chose to choose Baron Corbin over Kevin Owens, for example. Gervin says, I wish WWE would use the War Games gimmick on Survivor Series, something new and fresh to watch. A good shout, to be fair. It would do very well for a Survivor Series elimination format as well, but you can only start eliminating people once everybody's in the match at once. I think they could do a lot with that. They definitely could. Thank you, Theas. I appreciate that. AK says, which tag team can split in this draft, if any? I don't see any tag team splitting personally. I think they would move over to the other side and then have a split. I know there is talk about the Street Profits, but I don't think we're there yet. I definitely don't think we're there yet. And even if they do that, they're getting back together pretty sharpish. Brandon says, you can only have one last world title reign for either Jeff Hardy or Rey Mysterio. Who are you picking? Rey Mysterio, he never had a good world championship run because it was always taken away from him. Whereas Jeff Hardy has had some good ones. That's how I see it. Rob said the same thing as you, Tom. I believe once Becky returned, it was kind of a return to order in the division. It kind of was. It kind of was. They just put them in a position whereby you've got great talent coming through. Here's the 4 horsewomen at the top. Let's just put you back down a little bit. Just a little bit. Irvin says, why doesn't the WWE bring back the All Women's Evolution pay-per-view? Right, there's a number of reasons for this. Essentially, a lot of it comes down to viewership and ratings, but while that's what they say in public, the reason that I've personally been given is that women can wrestle in Saudi Arabia now. We don't need to do an all-women's show. I'll be honest with you guys, I think that's bullshit. But that is apparently part of the reasoning. Brandon says, is Naomi being set up to be squashed by Sonya? If that's the way it is going, a match between them both. I don't necessarily think a squash, but I do think Sonya Deville will win upon her return. I like where they're going with it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it. And John says, I didn't mean get away from Charlotte as much as get away from Raw, so it's a little easier to forget about all the BS the last year. Okay, yep, thank you for clarifying. I definitely get what you're saying there. I do think there will be a move away from Raw and getting rid of a certain stigma. Alexa will also be dropping a lot of the characteristics that have been unpopular with fans. They'll be dropping a lot of those. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. We've been streaming for just under an hour, and I like to stream for an hour on YouTube. Then I'm going to get myself some food. I'm going to go get some food, I think, and get ready for spoiler warning. It involves quite a lot of scripting. So I will be seeing, hopefully, as many of you as possible for spoiler warning later on tonight. It starts in 3 hours, so that is 10 PM UK time. And that would be 5 PM EST over in the US. I'll wrap up the last few questions before saying sayonara. If you've enjoyed the show today on YouTube, please do click like and please subscribe if you haven't. Tell your friends, share the video, and let them know what we do here. Christoph says, by the way, since you're a Balor fan too, his Prince Persona is the only wrestling action figure I bought. I've just that single one standing here and it makes my friends smile when they visit. So you basically, you just bought the hot guy. You just bought the hot guy. And I respect that. AK says, thanks, Tom. Hope you have a good stream and stream ahead. Thank you very much, AK. I'm enjoying having these YouTube streams to basically catch a lot of people that I can't always catch on Twitch, but Twitch will still be the home going forwards. Basically, I make money from Twitch, so I have to focus on it. Brandon says, did you see Christopher Daniels return to Impact? Can't get over how small the crowds are there. The reaction was just so crappy because of this. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to WWE and AEW. Impact has been directly affected by AEW's success. Crowds are shrinking for it. Christoph says, thanks a lot. Okay, wrapping up there, guys. Hopefully we'll see as many of you as possible for spoiler warning. Twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, all one word. And we will also be streaming on Sunday and on Monday right here for 1 hour on YouTube as well. Thank you, everybody, and have a great